In a world where most people watch movies and then forget about them, these brave heroes join forces to watch them again and then talk about them. Join them in their epic journey as they go back in time, a decade and beyond, to revisit and break down films from a vast array of genres. Do these movies hold up over time? Are they classics? Find out on Retro Movie Roundtable. Starring your hosts, Bryan Frye, Chad Robinson, Dustin Melbartis, Lizzie Haynes, and Russell Guest. Coming now to headphones in your ears.
Welcome, all you lords, ladies and knights, to the Retro Movie Roundtable. Welcome to the show where we watch movies and then talk about them. I'm your host, Russell Guest, and joining me today is my good friend and co-host from the Lilac City, Mr. Bryan Frye.
Good evening, everybody. It's a wonderful dusk out here right now, and thank you for tuning in.
And popular guest here, Miss Bears Rebecca Fonte. How you doing in Austin?
I am hot as crap here. It is awful.
Well,
but I am good. But the city is hot.
Well, when the weather's awful, movies are good. That helps us go indoors for these moments. So now, Bears, please tell the listeners at home about your efforts on the A-Glyph for All Genders, Lifestyles, and Identities Film Festival.
Yeah, thank you. I am the artistic director of Austin's Queer Film Festival, which is in its 36th year. It's actually the longest running film festival in Austin and the fourth longest queer film festival in America. So we are about a month away from Go, which is August 23rd through the 27th. So I'm getting to do that fun thing of sending all the filmmakers like, hey, you've been accepted into the film festival letters right now, which is really nice. And we're super excited to have this year's festival. I mean, obviously this is a crazy year to be queer in America. So to celebrate it and bring films that can bring the community together is really important.
Great. Yeah. Now, more movies have happy endings than not. Today, we may not be venturing that direction. So in a parallel universe, Bears, you get to break up any movie couple. What movie couple would you give an unhappy ending?
I mean, I think it's going to be Twilight. I mean, those kids, like, I just don't get it. Like, their love seems really weird to me. Like, if he's 400 years old or whatever when he goes to high school to pick up a high school girl, that's a little creepy. And also Kristen Stewart, we know she's gay. So, like, to have her hooked up with Robert Pattinson, for the rest of her life is, I think, unfortunate for all the women out there who want to be with Kristen Stewart. So we need to keep that Stan ability to have her single. So let's break them up.
So you're putting her and Ashley Green together now? Is that where you're going with this now?
Oh, yeah, don't take my Ashley Green away.
I
Don't
mean,
you dare take my Ashley Green away. She did those Life Water ads, and I was like,
and you threw away all your other bottled water in an instant. No more Dasani. It's all Life Water.
Of course I'll buy that.
Has Aquafina actually gotten Aquafina to do an ad? It's a lost opportunity if they haven't.
I mean, they should say they're going to sue her if she doesn't do an ad, because, it's confusing.
It seems like a win-win. They like money. She likes money. Everybody wins. So, Bryan, who's not winning in the love life for you? What on-screen couple are you breaking up?
Mr. and Mrs. Smith.
Okay.
It irritated me to no end that they got back together in that. Like, I needed that to just be a death to us part kind of thing. The off-screen romance didn't go too well either. So, yeah, I'm going Brangelina.
Oh, okay. Yep, that makes sense. Now, this is kind of a loophole. I'm going to kind of go double back on myself. But back when this happened, I would have broken up Marty McFly's parents again, so we could have gotten another movie out of this deal.
Are you putting Marty with his mom then?
No, I'm just saying, like, I want something else to go wrong in that relationship at the end of the third movie, so we get a fourth movie. Again, I don't want to do this now. Don't do the Indiana Jones thing where we go back and make substandard movies decades later. But if I could have gone back in time and gotten more Back to the Future, I love those movies so much.
Maybe we could have gotten the version with the other original Marty.
Oh, yeah, the guy who had it for like a week. I believe it or not, we have not done any of those movies, and we need to fix that sometime.
Oh, that's crazy. I would definitely be down for part 2 if you want to do all 3 of them, because part 2, I think, is in the tradition of all the underrated second movies. I think it's one of the best sequels ever.
This might be the hottest take of the night. I can pass on Back to the Future, all of it.
It's
Uh,
okay. I'll protect you and cut that
I
out
don't.
just for your own.
I don't.
for your own safety, we're gonna cut out that line. that you
I
just
don't.
said.
I don't hate it. It's not something I'm gonna set on fire. I own them. It's fine. I don't have that like cult like this is amazing.
Bears, what's the last movie you saw?
It was Oppenheimer actually, and the second to last movie I saw was Barbie. So technically the last movie I saw was Barbenheimer, as most of
Barbenheimer.
America.
All right.
Come on, Bobby. Let's go party.
Yeah,
I like how the movie industry has made this a thing that just wasn't there before. It's just like the food industry. At one point said chicken and waffles. Like that's a thing now.
especially because it's different studios, and you never see that, and they've both embraced it.
I know. That's what I'm saying. Chicken and waffles wasn't a thing either. And then somebody said these things should go together, and I was like, yeah, all right, sure. I like both those things.
French fries and a Wendy's Frosty. I love it too. I love that they turned into it too. That's how you deal with stuff like this. Is you turn into the skid. But the thing I like the most about it, and this is what kicked it off for me, was a pair of tweets that were released, I think, on or around the same day. One was by Ryan Gosling gushing about Barbie. He says, "Oh my gosh, I'm so happy I got to play Ken. It's like Greta Gerwig was just speaking Ken through me, and you just got to see Barbie." And it was just gushing. And then, like within a limited amount of time, Cillian Murphy came out and for a promo for a tweet about Oppenheimer, and it says, "Yeah, I think it's pretty good, I guess." It's just like the dichotomy of Gosling and Cillian Murphy. I just like, yay, thank you for that.
Maybe you're not so verbose if you only eat an almond a day for 3 weeks. I went to see Oppenheimer with somebody who insisted on referring to Cillian Murphy as Cillian Murphy.
I did that for a long time, so I have to commiserate with that person that you know.
That is
I
also
mocked them for 3 hours.
Also, yeah, that's also how I started saying his name until I was not so politely corrected. So it's
Okay.
like, sorry.
All right, Cillian Murphy.
Yeah, that's the part you're mispronouncing.
Yeah. So anyway, and the last movie that I saw was Elemental, which is the first movie I have seen in theaters, and since pre-pandemic for 3 years, Mary, Grant, and we went and we had a good time, and he liked it. So a family outing in the theaters. So hopefully more of that to come in our future. So
Yeah, good selection.
now, Bryan, what movie is it we're gonna do today?
We are tackling Blue is the Warmest Color.
All right, this stars Léa Seydoux and Adèle Exarchopoulos. The release year is 2013. The budget is $4.2 million, not a huge budget. It grosses $2.2 million domestically. That may sound like a small showing, but worldwide, this movie does $19.5 million worldwide, which is a big return off of the budget of its size. In America, that only places it at 178. And the movie placing ahead of it is Old Boy, and the movie placing behind it is The Christmas Candle.
Well, this is a much better movie than The Christmas Candle, that's for sure.
Okay. And the number one movie this year was Hunger Games: Catching Fires. Now, if I'm gonna guess, this movie just didn't get a wide release. This movie is going to be rated. This is an X-rated movie in America, is it not?
It was it was NC-17 when it came out. Although the IFC movie chain refused to give it the NC-17 rating and opened it up to, they said, mature teenagers. They would let anybody in.
Okay.
Because there's an argument to be made that the only reason this movie was given an NC-17 rating was because the sex scene was between two women, and if it had been between a man and a woman, it wouldn't have gotten that. But that's something that I think will come up again and again as we talk about this movie, is that it seems to be rated on a different scale than many other films, simply because it was 2013 and these were two women. And if you remember 2013, that's a couple years before we made gay marriage legal, and it was right after gay marriage was made legal in France, which is actually where this film is from. So technically, I would say domestically, if you want to give the domestic budget, you have to find what it made domestically in France, because that is its home audience.
That is true. That is
true.
true.
The number.
Yeah, my numbers are American centric. And fairness, I don't know how many people show up for a movie that shows at Cannes and then has subtitles, and it's asking a lot of the American audience. So anyway, it does fine worldwide. In fact, it gets a lot of press and critical acclaim. So The IMDb rating gives it a 7.7. The critics of Rotten Tomatoes gives it a very high score of 88%. The audience score is just right behind it at 85%. As I mentioned, this is a Cannes Film Festival Palme d'Or winner, that is the Golden Palm. That's the highest award that you can win at the Cannes Film Festival. We don't often talk about movies that come from that track, but this is not only the director, Abdellatif Kechiche, but also the two leading actresses, Léa Seydoux and Adele Exarchopoulos, both come in. The judging panel was included from Steven Spielberg, Anne Lang, and Nicole Kidman, made an unprecedented move to award this film's two main actresses the award with the director. So never before has this been done. They broke the format for how this goes. The Golden Globes gives us a nomination for Best Foreign Film. It does not win. The BAFTA Academy Awards nominated for two awards. Rising Star Award for Léa Seydoux and Best Film Not in the English Language. The British Independent Film Award winner for Best International Independent Film, the Lumiere's Award winner for Best Director, and the Satellite Award nominee for Best Foreign Language Film, Best Actress for Adele Exarchopoulos, and Best Supporting Actress for Léa Seydoux. And the Austin Film Critics Association Award winner right there next to you, Bears. I went ahead and added this in there for you. And a slew of other film awards and nominations across all things. So Best Foreign Film widely across the board. This movie racked up a lot of awards that you may not list of. So go to Wikipedia and check out those if you want to. The film was considered for a frontrunner for an Oscar nomination for Best Foreign Film upon its release at Cannes Film Festival. However, the film was deemed ineligible by the Academy due to its late release. So just bad timing. I don't know how you don't just get picked up the next year, but that's what I read. Bears, had you seen this movie before?
Perfect time to watch it with you guys.
I love it. I want to congratulate you. Very few people are bold enough to throw out movies that they haven't seen when they come on the show. So I'm going to give you some gold stars for that. So
oh, thank you.
That's awesome. So coming to it 10 years later, which is still a lot has changed, as you mentioned, in the world. How does it feel like it's aging to you?
Well, it's interesting because when it first came out, it got that instant success when it came out of Cannes, but then there was a great deal of backlash right after that. And so I feel like what has happened is the criticism that has hung over the film has sort of colored it a little bit. And I feel like now we're finally at the point where I think we can go back and appreciate the movie for what it was at the time and what it's about. You know, so now that the criticism is finally and the controversy is worn off a little bit, I feel like it's easier to appreciate the film.
Yeah. Now, Bryan, had you seen this one before?
No, it's kind of on one of my lists of like foreign films that I swung and missed on when it came out. That's the reason when it was presented in a short list, I was like, oh, I intended to see that film. So no, I hadn't seen this before.
And how about you? What was it like for just a first time going down for you?
This was a very difficult movie to watch in company.
with a wife?
Wife, child. Sometimes if I get the opportunity, I have to watch movies at work. That was out.
Yeah. No.
My biggest struggle with this was finding an appropriate time to watch it. I guess would be my way to say it. I really, really struggled with.
Well, we made a date night out of it. My wife had seen it before. She was a little surprised that I hadn't, and so we set up a whole night to sit and watch it and enjoy it, and talk about it a little bit afterwards.
Okay. In that case, you were being, I guess, not only reassured but recommended in this case. So that's good to hear. I went in not having known about it, to be honest with you. I missed it. I missed the buzz. I missed the conversation about it. And I sometimes Chad gives me a hard time for not giving movies with subtitles a chance. I admittedly am an unintellectual viewer when it comes to this. If it has subtitles, I sometimes sit there and go like, yeah, but I mean, I'm going to pick this other movie instead.
I do far too much Kurosawa to draw that line.
Dustin and Chad will both chastise me for reaching for the American dubs and just being lazy and taking bad lip sync versions out of it. I'll do that.
I'm not beyond that. I mean, I get lazy.
Listen, if it's going to get you to watch the movie, I think that's better than not doing it.
But
you know,
in this case, I did watch it. It was free on Tubi. It does, and I hate to sound this way, but when you make me read subtitles, I almost have to watch it a second time because all I'm doing is reading text. Maybe I'm a slow reader, but this movie lives on the facial reactions, and the close-up shots, and all the feels that are going on. So to me, it demanded a second viewing.
I had never really heard of Tubi before, so I decided to give that a swing. And then given how difficult it was to section off time to watch it. I kind of just stuck with it. I may end up buying this at some point in time. I don't know. I'm not exactly sure who I would watch it with. Like,
That's fair.
there's like, and I don't want that to come out the wrong way. There is a percentile of my brain that says, if anybody knew you were watching this, they would get the wrong idea of why.
Yep, that's fair. That's very fair.
And yeah, so sure.
I do feel like you're in line here to get some sponsorship money from Tubi, though, by the way.
With all their horrible commercials, I'm already fired.
Edit around that, but yeah, you might be able to.
I'm already fired.
I like your ads. They're great. All right. Anyway, there'll be spoilers that lie ahead, so we will be back after these messages.
Welcome to the All 80s Movies Podcast.
I'm Bill.
And I'm Jason. And this is the podcast where we talk about the blockbusters, the flops, and everything in between from one of the freshest decades for movies, the 1980s. So whether you're a brain, a jock, a valley girl, or a Jedi, we've got some 80s classics for you.
Do these movies stand the test of time? Are we discovering something new? Is there an 80s movie we're finally watching for the first time?
Join us each week as we dive into the cinematic nostalgia that inspired and influenced a generation. From the hits to the cult classics, we'll discuss our earliest memories, favorite scenes, fun facts, and our not-so-favorite movie moments, too.
It's the All 80s Movies Podcast, now available on all major streaming platforms. Please subscribe and happy listening.
All right, we're back. And for those who haven't seen Blue is the Warmest Color, with a U in the word color, since 2013.
Color.
Yes. Bryan, can you please give us a refresher?
Adele is a student who is trying to figure out love. After a dalliance with a young man in a grade above her, she realizes, with the aid of a harmless kiss from one of her female classmates, that she may be interested in something else. One day, while crossing the street, she is attracted to a short, blue-haired Emma. Adele dreams of Emma, and when a friend invites her to a club, she departs in an attempt to find her siren, which she successfully does. At this point, the introduction has been made, and she proceeds to have a platonic and then a very not platonic relationship with Emma. They discuss all manner of things as their love grows, from Adele's dreams to Emma's desire to be taken seriously as a painter. But seeds of discourse start to grow as the much younger Adele strays into the arms of a fellow teacher. Once Emma finds out, she is furious with Adele's lies and betrayal, throwing her out of her home and out of her life. 3 lonely years pass before they reconnect at a coffee house, where Adele confesses her desires to be with Emma, and, with difficulty, Emma denies her while still parting amicably. Adele receives an invitation to Emma's new art showing, where she is reintroduced to some of the friends she had left behind. The movie closes with Adele leaving without telling anyone, walking away in a startlingly blue dress.
All right, Bears, this is a lot to bite off. This movie is an expansive movie. It's a long movie. We cover a lot of ground, and it starts as a coming of age kind of, finding oneself. It develops into a romance, and then it kind of has the breakdown of that. And let's talk about this as a whole journey. How is all of this going down? This is a lot to process for an audience.
Yeah, I mean, you're following several years of a character's life. You start with her being completely unexperienced in love at all, and she experiences the most, probably what she's going to define as the most important relationship in her life, and we see it from start to finish. 3 hours of movie time, we're given the time to dive very deeply both into their physical relationship and their conversational relationship, and I think we really get to know how they work. And so when they do break up, it is very heartbreaking for the audience. I think the length of time and the amount that the director allows us to really know these characters adds to the emotion that I think it's impossible to avoid when they start breaking, because you really are with Adele, and it's tragic. It's very sad. It's a very sad movie. I mean, there's this argument of that most lesbian movies are sad. The general trope is somebody dies in the movie, and arguably that is what happened in the graphic novel that this is based on. But this one is just sad because of the breakup. And we get to see somebody really go through pain and go to try to get that love back and have it denied. And then we see them meet again, and that possibility that maybe there's still something there. And no, that's also denied. And it's really sad. And yet you see her walk off, maybe stronger for it, ready to meet the world. But we do see the whole life of a relationship in this film.
I don't know if I'm pushing a bad thought process here, but I have two questions that I was dying to ask you guys. One, do we think Emma cheated on her current girlfriend with Adele in the first place? And two, do you think she was in the process of cheating with Lise, which started Adele's paranoia?
I'm glad you brought both of these points up because it's certainly the insecurities seem to be founded. I don't want to totally justify what Adele did. You want to confront as opposed to stray. Yeah, even during the birthday scene, it was going probably far enough that, I was surprised she didn't say something. Now, she's a more timid character, not to say like, hey, you're, what's going on over there at this birthday, at this gallery party, not the birthday party, sorry. When she very much focuses, the physical nature of Lise is there. I really empathize a lot with Adele. Obviously, infidelity is bad, but on the other hand, I was sitting there going like, Léa Seydoux's character, Emma, has not been very kind, and she's kind of run her down for being a teacher and challenged her to write and kind of challenging her like, you're not as intellectual enough for me. And then so she's running with this other crowd. And yeah, that insecurity is there. And once she starts spending all this time with this other, I felt pretty bad for Adele's character, especially as even she did it, she had an enormous amount of remorse for it. And she knew that she still loved Emma. And then honestly, Emma's reaction surprised me. That viscerally strong hurt reaction of just like, wow. I mean, yeah, this is unfortunate. If you want to call it quits, but I mean, you did pave the road to this sad ending.
So that's actually one of the parts of the movie that I enjoyed the most in terms of the realism of this, because I had loaded up both barrels with Emma's gonna break this quiet girl's heart. Like, I had decided that from square one, like that's what's gonna happen, and it's gonna be an ageism thing. It's gonna be, I'm older than you, I'm wiser than you, I'm moving on because you're not enough for me. Like, I had prepared myself completely. Like, I would have put money that was what was going to happen. I absolutely loved that it wasn't. That aspect that it was actually Adele that instigated it. But that's also why I asked the question, because I want to know, do you guys think that the demons, the devils on her shoulder, were right saying, oh, she's cheating on you, oh, you're not good enough? Do you think that they were right? Or do you think that's just what they were, and that visceral reaction from Emma was more I would never have done this to you?
Yeah, I think it was a little bit, she protests too much. I definitely feel that Emma was cheating on Lise in the very first instance with Adele, and that's why they broke up. And now we're seeing her cheat on Adele with her ex-girlfriend. I think they had already cheated by the time they got to that birthday party, and they were certainly cheating when it came to the gallery party. You were talking about, is this going to be an obvious like breakup because of the ageism, and being older and wiser? I also think you can't avoid the issues of class in this. Emma is a well-to-do, she's upper class, she's well educated, she's in this artsy sort of elite set. Her parents are very supportive of her and of her sexuality, and that's completely different from Adele. And so it's not her world. And like you said, that Emma was like ashamed to be dating a school teacher. She wanted Adele to fit in with her crowd, but Adele just slips into being sort of the homemaker at that party, that birthday party, which is really, it's sort of sad. It broke my heart. She did all the cooking, and she was really trying to be the supportive partner, but that was all she had to talk about. She didn't understand those people. She was left out of conversations, and she was supposed to be there to support her girlfriend, and Emma could have cared less about her at that party. And that's how you knew it was over, I think. So I definitely think that Emma cheated, and it doesn't make what Adele did any better, but it does make Emma's slut shaming of her pretty awful, because I think it's like it's almost bullying, that scene when she breaks up with her. You don't have to be that.
I got the gist that Emma's anger was actually largely driven from the fact that she was with a man, and I don't think she would have been as angry had she been with another woman.
Yeah, that was my next question. Does it make it worse that it was with a man?
It does for Emma, when in reality, I don't think it should. I mean, you just, you're two people, you're together. I mean, it's going to hurt no matter who it's with, in my opinion. I mean,
there is a very real thing by erasure, which is that it's very big in both sides of sexuality, whether it's two gay men or two lesbian women not understanding that it's possible that one of the partners could be bisexual, and then being more outraged when that happens. Like, I'll never forget the scene in Chasing Amy when Joey Lauren Adams announces that she's with a guy, and the first reaction from her friends is, "Oh, we lost another one." That's sort of where Emma goes right away here, is like, I do think that she was more offended that it was with a man, but I think that's also like Emma wanted to be like, I turned you into being a lesbian. And so, if you turn back, it almost means like, I wasn't able to fully convert you or something. I don't know. Emma is very power hungry. She wants to have control over every aspect of Adele's life. So I think she would even like to have control over who she cheated on her with, in that sort of regard.
I think there's truth to that.
I absolutely revere Chasing Amy as a film. Super happy you brought that up. But the one thing in terms of that party that we were talking about a little bit earlier, that reminded me so much of John Cusack and Catherine Zeta-Jones in High Fidelity. That entire sequence. I mean, I know he wasn't like making dinner and everything, but him just sitting there with that look on his face, that entire scene where he's just like, I have no idea what these people are talking about. And it's driving me insane.
Yeah.
So,
it was sadder in this case than it was in High Fidelity, but yeah,
yes.
I think it's a fair comparison.
Well, and I think too, like, to get back to the class thing, you have to understand that the director is French Tunisian, which means he's approaching French culture from an outsider perspective, and he's very much understanding the differences in French society between someone who has been welcomed into the elite circles and somebody who has to push their way in. And he was attracted to this project specifically because he wanted to tell a story of the school teacher. It had nothing to do with the queer angle, even though he is queer. It had more to do with the wanting to tell the class story. So I think you really have to approach the film with that in mind a little bit to understand what's going on between the characters.
I want to go back to the beginning third of this movie. It's an entire act of this movie. It really resonated with me early on because I'll be honest with you, this is a unique movie viewing for me, and maybe we'll have more of this going on in the future, but watching Adele's character come to terms with her own sexuality was kind of emotionally impactful, not realizing where she falls in the spectrum and then trying and giving a go, feeling the pressure from her friends saying like, I guess I need to like this boy. He's really, this is a good deal. Like this, this is what I'm supposed to like, and kind of trying to force it. The anger she feels with herself of just, I don't want to be different. She knows the ostracism that's about to ensue, and she's right. We see it, and it's very hard to watch somebody get bullied. We grew up in a time when that just wasn't okay, and just wasn't okay. And I honestly, as somebody who I just was able to put myself in their shoes and empathize a lot with that situation, and sitting there going like, wow, this is terrible that somebody would sit there and berate you that much and make you feel that bad. My heart just really crushed in that scene, when her friends were just ganging up on her. I'm just like, bullying's always bad, but this felt particularly like, man, this isn't safe. I'm on an island right now. You can't go home and talk to your parents about it in Adele's case. What a hard position to be in. I think the world's changing, and I hope that this movie's important. It captured, I think, what would have been a very difficult thing to to experience as a young person. And boy, the realism of this movie, it feels very real. At times it's clinically real, and it lacks style at times, but on the other hand, it's just so viscerally real. And the first third of this movie just instantly made me sit there and go like, wow, I'm feeling a lot of stuff for this character, things that I don't admittedly think about very often and don't become confronted with. So that's a powerful thing for a movie to do.
Yeah, I was just going to mention one of the reasons why it feels so real, and we can talk more about this when we talk about the acting, but it's very naturalistic because so many of the sequences are improvised, and the director encouraged the actresses to throw out the dialogue and just say how they would say it, and left the camera on for long amounts of time, and basically just captured moments. And one of the reasons why Adele's character ended up being named Adele is because they kept screwing up saying her actual name when they were rehearsing, and so they just decided to change the character's name.
Two things on all that. One, I was just desperate for the one friend just haul off and hit that girl in the face. I wanted to see her get knocked out.
There were a couple of them I really wanted to see knocked out. There wasn't just one.
No, the one that was really instigating that fight. It's really the last scene of the high school. Yeah, I know I'm probably not supposed to say that as a male, but like if another female character could have drilled her, that would have made me immeasurably happy, because just the visceral hatred that I have for people that act that way, like especially because, I get that you've had sleepovers and whatnot, but I would have said the same thing if it were two gay men, or a gay man getting the same treatment. It just it's such an unfair thing to just assume that every thought that they have is an attraction piece to you, and it's frankly arrogant to think like that you're her type. You know what I mean? Like there's so much to that that's wrong, and that yeah, maybe I shouldn't be advocating violence, but if somebody, like maybe the girl she shared that one kiss with, if she just like hauled off and slugged her, that would have been awesome for me.
No, but I mean that was very true. The hatred was very real and pointed there. It's interesting. We talk about how real this is. A good portion of the be real footage was just Adele and Léa Seydoux, actually in real time, kind of out of character, and the camera would just catch her doing things, particularly Adele, while they were on set. And during the footage, they kept calling her Adele, and the director liked her name and what it meant, like the Greek meaning behind it. And so the character's name in the graphic novel is Clementine, and there's an orange tone that goes with Clementine's character, contrasting the blue tone that we have of Emma. In the graphic novel, this is a bigger deal. There are still lighting tones and stylistic decisions. They give Adele warmth when they show her, and they again things become cooler with when as she becomes with Emma as well. The mood obviously affects the color tones as well. When they're in the park and they're falling in love, it's all it's picturesque. It's just serene. It's on cloud nine. It feels like you're falling in love. At the breakup scene, it's it's fluorescent, it's white, it's cold, and it feels unsafe, less sheltered. So it's interesting. The director does such a good job, not only with the characters and doing all that, but to use the lighting and to change throughout the mood. This is a long movie. You have a lot of range of emotions to show, and they did that very well, even if the character of Clementine is not as overtly orange as Emma is literally blue.
Yeah, and it's interesting that Emma's hair color changes. That's almost kind of when she's not as warm to Adele. Is it when she loses the blue hair? That's when we start to see some change.
There's a 3-year jump in the story there, and that's when that occurs. Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually remember the other thing I was going to say when you're talking about the rough approach to some of the filming of this. I actually think that its lack of stylism is its style.
It is. And that's what this director is known for.
I'll get into one thing that bothered the crap out of me on this later in our superlatives, but yeah, other than that, yeah.
In preparation for the roles, Emma, as Léa Seydoux, attended painting classes, sculpture classes. Abdella Kechiche, he made them spend an enormous amount of time with them, going to museums, filming to dive into these characters. He kept challenging Léa to pick up masculine characteristics, and so she would go looking for kind of these masculine characters to pay attention to how they're walking, whether it be Marlon Brando and James Dean and their traits, and this is how the immersive nature. They both were heavily awarded for this, but I mean, I just want to insist, this is not just an acting gig. They didn't just come and do this. This is almost a year in the making. It's not necessarily method acting, but it's deeply immersive. Talking about this constantly, what would this character do? There's a level of care, and he's ambitious. He really put them through a lot. I don't mean like made you swim in cold water, put them through a lot, but I mean emotionally demanding a lot of asking them to get into character from this. This goes well beyond reading a book or two. It's very demanding the more you read into it, and I have to say, it seems over the top, but the acting performances are just so genuine. It's not just the filming. It's not just the director. I just don't feel like I'm watching Léa Seydoux. I've seen Léa Seydoux be in Bond or Mission Impossible. This is Emma to me. The characters are who they are playing.
Yeah, it isn't lost to me, too, that we're watching and talking about this movie in the midst of the SAG actors strike, and to think about the kind of time and respect that acting profession is given in a country like France versus here, and the amount of, actors aren't even paid for prep time in America and under the SAG rules. So, these girls were on salary in preparation for this movie. Now, probably not a lot of money because they were young and it was 10 years ago. But still, that respect for getting the performances right, it just can't be denied that there's a certain craft sometimes to European filmmaking that it is hard to replicate in America when we're so much capitalistic driven and thinking about product. I mean, if you're putting a movie like this out and you're spending, $2.25 million on it, and you're not expecting to really make much back, that's just a different energy. It's more of a, a project of love rather than how much churn can we get as we sell the burger placement rights to this latest Marvel movie for the tie-in,
Yeah, this is not that for sure. I thought it was great that in casting them, Adele Exarchopoulos is 18, which is, given the demanding nature of what they're going to be doing in terms of their intimate scenes, that's as young as you're going to be able to go. And Léa Seydoux is 27. I like the age difference in the casting. The more and more I get older, the more and more you sit there and you go like, these 90s movies where this like 35-year-old person is playing a high school student, I don't like it. I remember even being a young teenager sitting there going like, is that what people are going to look like in high school? And like, I mean, it's one of those things that was just like, I believe there are young people who can have talent when properly directed and channeled. And it does irk me when you get some people in their 30s playing teenagers. And, if it's a TV show and you've been doing it for 12 years, I think that's a valid excuse, but it doesn't work that way, quite frankly, like most of the time. So I'd like to see the age difference. They casted well. Léa Seydoux came from family that, in hindsight, the director liked her because of her upper class background. She, this is like a quote unquote, there's parts of her upbringing that just prepared her to be right for this role. And I mean, that's just a level of consideration with the casting. That's just, again, it's tremendous. They were both excited to do this because Abdellatif has great notoriety. We don't necessarily pay attention to his name here in America as often, but in his circle as a filmmaker in Europe, this is a big time director.
Yeah, he had already won the César Award, which is the French version of the Oscar, twice for directing when he made this film.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I think we got to talk about this. I mean, one of the things that gets this movie attention is an enormously, it's a lot of intimate scenes that are very long and very show all. There's a harshness almost to it. It's not necessarily stylized to be warm and loving. It's, again, so real. It's almost like two people just burst into your dorm room and you're just sitting there in the other bunk, like right next to them, and they don't realize you're there. Like, I mean, there's something almost voyeuristic about it as a viewer. I did want to talk about this. I wouldn't say they're going for titillation here. You feel their love, you feel it's very real, but on the other hand, this is not American cinema. Clearly, let's talk about this. This is one of the things that people do talk about. This is what gets it so much attention. I don't know if that's what this movie wants its attention for, but it does get a lot of attention because of an enormous amount of intimacy.
I mean, as a film director myself, I have to say, you don't put that much sex in a movie without hoping that that's going to get some of the attention, Like, there is a certain factor of a director making a choice. We don't ever see Emma cheat, so we don't really know that, and that's part of his intention. But, we do see Emma and Adele have a lot of sex, so that is also his intention. That's what he wants us to see. He's in control of what's on the screen. And, the main sex scene in this, when they first come together, is 6.5 minutes long. It's very graphic. It's very beautiful. I think it's very well shot, and it feels real. It almost is. I mean, it almost is real. I mean, I think that, but I still think it's done very artfully. I don't think it was done for titillation, even though there was some accusation about it being what people would call the male gaze, and that's easy to identify with it being a male director having control over these two, especially one very much younger woman. But I don't think that changes how beautiful it is and how titillating it is for an audience. And I'm going to say for a lesbian audience too. I've talked to many lesbians who love this film. One of them told me that this movie was her queer awakening film. It was like the first film that she saw that was about people having a relationship like she wanted to have. And I think it's great that somebody would get to see that relationship reflected on screen. And that is not just seeing people talking and having dinner in a restaurant. It's about seeing, the sexual aspect of that relation too. It normalizes it. And I just think that when you had such a controversy about it in 2013, you can't escape the political ramifications of taking a lesbian scene and just throwing it on screen and being like, hey, this is 2013, welcome to the new world. This is okay. And if it bothers you, then you're old and out of date.
I have a slightly different take on the length and the number of scenes between the two of them. I think it really comes into making the end scene at the coffee shop more powerful, because she's basically like dancing around, is she as good as I am? And Emma's like, no.
She's grasping at straws. She knows that they've been very passionate. She wants her back. Bad.
Well, no, I get that. I'm just saying,
doing everything she can to try to get her back.
But the bottom line is she as good as I was? And the answer to that was definitely no. Like, you could tell by, Emma's desire to be with her again. Her head overrode her heart there. I think that the reason, the length and the amount of that goes into saying, like, yeah, but we had passion.
Yeah.
Like, maybe I didn't have the art knowledge that you wanted and this, that, and the other, but we had this. And that is very important. I like that as a piece of a relationship is important.
And also, I'm 18 or 21 or, whatever the age is as they move through. I mean, you can't necessarily blame somebody for not having the same level of intellectual discourse when they're
Absolutely.
9 years younger than you. I mean, come on.
Right.
I think there's also one of these things where when I first read it, it was like it took 10 days to shoot one of the intimate scenes. And you're like, this is pretty excessive. And it does feel a bit exploitive at times, to be honest with you. It's a 3-hour movie, and it's over 20 minutes of it is sex. Really. I'm not even sure that counts. I didn't do a minute timer myself. I got that stat off of the internet. I'm not sure if that counts there's a sad intimate encounter with her and Thomas before, like when she realizes, like, I'm trying to have fun here. Like, that was a very sad scene. The lights weren't turning on for her. And I loved that they showed him crying because he really liked her when they broke up, by the way. Like, there's just something that's real, like, of like this character who will be removed from the movie in the first quarter of the movie is given such depth and character that was so good in its own right. And I thought that scene was just perfect. But some of the other ones, as Frye had mentioned, like, there was a length of it that just made me sit there and go, like, what are they doing? Like, I mean, is this like the director's cut or something like that?
I've got at least 40 yards of insulation from the street to my large screen television, and it all has trees, and I've never been thankful for that more than watching this movie. No, dude, I'm telling you, like, I gotta wait till they all go to bed, and I'm wanting to go to bed, so I'm like doing this in pieces, and I'm watching this, and I'm like,
I just put the disclaimer out there what I was watching ahead of time to Mary and saying,
oh no, I told her about it and everything. I'm doing that. Like, I don't want like a trick or treater to come up to my house or something. You know what I mean? Like, oh my God.
I guess we didn't put a disclaimer out there. You should at least let somebody know what it is you're watching ahead of time, just so that you don't get walked in on the room and be like, so do you need to be alone or something? So,
like, what if UPS is running late? Like, I don't know. I don't know. And there is a large percentage of brain that was saying, I don't feel like I should be watching this.
I think because it is so intimate. But then the other question is, would audience have felt the same way if it had been a man and a woman? And I think in 2013, the argument is it was a very different experience, that.
And it was.
I remember we covered Fatal Attraction. I remember there were some scenes that I thought were not necessarily directed very well there. They showed them off, and I felt like they lost their tone when they were doing some of their intimate scenes. Whereas contrast that with, like, we covered True Romance. Man, those were loving scenes. Like, something about, like, it was very stylized. Tony Scott totally turned on the lights and the music and the shadows, and it's what you don't see and all that stuff. Just felt like a very loving scene. And it was a really good intimate scene, I thought. It's funny when he talked about it, he's just like, everybody's done these, it's hard to do them and put your own spin on them. And like, he was like, just being like, this whole thing's a cliche. I had to do it. And I was like, yeah, but you did it so well. Why are you talking about it this way in the commentary? Here, it's like, again, the lighting's just so natural. Like, they don't have excessive amount of makeup. The wardrobe is there's no wardrobe at all necessarily, unless you talk about prosthetic private parts, which the camera doesn't hide. You know what I mean? Like, in fact, it zooms in on very explicit things. So we as Americans are just not used to this. And I'm going to just chalk it up to Europeans are stunned. Americans will tolerate the amount of violence, abuse, particularly towards women, or blood, or carnage that we have in movies, and they do sit there and they go like, that's kind of messed up, America. And America will sit there and look at European films and sit there and go like, that's a lot of sex, Europe. Like, that's pretty heavy. And there is just the difference in culture. And I have to admit, like you were talking about it, like there's an embarrassment in watching this, but Adele, the actress, mentioned like, this is not necessarily every European film, but there's a sensibility to it that isn't such a huge deal here.
Yeah.
And I can take that. I can take that criticism. That's fair. But two things. One, if I had watched a 6-minute male-female sex scene, yeah, at some point in that, I'm starting to think, this is...
Yeah, same thing. Is this the director's cut, or is this like the,
I think that as men, especially this day and age, the knee-jerk reaction, the judgment on being caught watching that, and I'm going to say being caught because that's what it would equate to. If you gave no warnings whatsoever and somebody walked in and you're watching that scene, there is a immediate and very damning judgment that happens.
Yeah. On the other hand, too, like there's this other stereotype that a guy can't sit there and watch a romance movie necessarily. I actually enjoyed the heck out of this thing. It's crushing at the end, but the realism and the depth of the characters, you just don't get that in every movie. I wanted a sequel very badly. Like, I hate where this movie ends, by the way.
Oh, I was 100% behind it. 100%.
You've driven me 3.5 hours up to this point. I'll stay for another half an hour. Like where's this?
Right.
I need blue is still the warmest color, even bluer, or 50 Shades of Blue. Like I will come back. I will watch Adele into her middle age. She will always be haunted by her love for Emma, but I want to know how she gets her groove back, and I need to know where her life goes, even if it is kind of a I bumped into you in a gallery in another 20 years and sits there and go you're like, hey, you were the one that got away kind of thing. So I don't know. It's very unsettled where this movie finishes for me.
The second part of what I was going to say in terms of the nudity aspect and the sex aspect in European films, I did a great deal of studying European advertising for school, and there's nudity in their orange juice commercials.
Yeah.
It is very commonplace. So the nudity thing isn't maybe so shocking as the elaborate sex that is happening. And that may be true of a lot of European film too. But I do think that there's maybe a little departure there between a British Trojan condoms ad than what was going on in this one. It was a vehicle. It served a purpose. I don't have a problem with it. My only big trepidation with it is viewing it through the lens of I'm going to do a podcast where I have to talk about this. and the entire time I'm thinking in my head, I would get if I showed up to this movie, I feel like I'd have people looking at me in theaters like, why is that guy here? That's a weird thing. That's a weird thing for me.
I've kind of felt that way. I went to a Tegan and Sarah concert. I had more than one person come up to me and being like, what are you doing here? It's like, well, I like Tegan and Sarah. You brought your wife to a Tegan and Sarah concert? It's like, look, I like their music, okay? It's I can just enjoy this, okay? Hey, shouldn't we all be more accepting? It's like
and for the record, I like Tegan and Sarah too. I just feel like I think one of the biggest learning experiences from watching this film was the guilt I felt for watching this film. It was a very real thing, and I was like, "Why do it?"
I'm curious. Have you guys ever seen Friends with Benefits with Mila Kunis and Justin Timberlake?
I have, but I regret it. I did not enjoy it.
No, I saw the other one. I saw No Strings Attached with.
I saw that too.
I saw that one
because that film has an equally long sex scene. It's regarded as the longest sex scene. In Hollywood. Yeah, it's 5 minutes. I'm reading it's 5 minutes and 40 seconds. So
didn't even hear about that.
And that came out in 2011. So that's a couple years before this. I was just curious because I don't remember there being any controversy about that at all.
This is a much better movie than that.
Yes. It's by miles. No, I've never seen it.
There is. It does bring up thoughts of Last Tango in Paris with Marlon Brando, and there's some issue the controversy about those sex scenes. I mean, they're long too, but it's also just that he's 25 years older than the woman that he's with.
The amount of everybody having to look through Titanic for one topless scene of just is this okay? There's this whole big epic movie, and this is a cinematic masterpiece, and the parental discussion of when it came out of just is this okay? Like, and I mean, so no, I mean, I think just I'm experiencing the American guilt that Bryan is talking about. And
Well, I think you can have different. It depends on situation. Like my guilt on this was more that I'm a voyeur on something deeply personal, which is
Yes.
probably what I was meant to feel.
yes,
I think
And
so.
that's
I think
and that's
yeah.
fine. But then you like take a movie like Requiem for a Dream with some of the scenes in that, which are reluctance to the point of near rape and
I've still not done that, by the way. You've watched-
please
you-
don't.
you-
I cannot warn you enough to
no,
not
you've
watch that
warned me
movie.
thoroughly, so I
I,
appreciate
I wish I could unsee that movie. But you know, there was even a scene in the movie Derailed with Clive Owen and Jennifer Aniston where I left the theater. I felt like I was having a heart attack watching this attack scene. And I like there are things that get shown for reactions and that sort of thing, but sometimes you just got to be like, I got a piece on this one.
Part of that pushback, though, that Barris was mentioning much earlier in the show was the directorial practices. It's not just the intimate scenes. Like, they would do a walk-by scene on the street 100 times. They would shoot over 800 hours of footage for the whole movie. So, yes, if you isolate the story to the
800 hours.
22 minutes of, like, intimate scenes in here, it does sound excessive. It does sound that way. But he's at least consistent in regards to telling you to, like, eat that scone, like, 20 times. You know what I mean? Like, he's... weirdly obsessive, and we saw this with Stanley Kubrick and some other movies, and also the director was pretty hard on his actress Shelley Duvall in The Shining, and it's like wasn't quite as an abusive relationship as that, but I mean, yeah, the actresses were pushed to their breaking point, and it was embarrassing to do these shoots. They are friends, I mean, so I mean, you know, just as an actress to be able to do that and shooting all of that, it's difficult. And again, none of that shows. They're so well prepared and they're so immersed in it that the people crying out and saying how indecent this was and the pain that they went through, and feel like to some degree the results are pretty much there. I can't say that it's presented in a tasteless way. It might seem excessive in the moment and some editing could be done to trim it down. But I think the context of what it is, I think there's a term to say is like, how do you know it's pornography? You know it when you see it. And this is not that.
Yeah, I think also if you're going to talk about the kind of lushness and intensity of the film, and you're going to just focus on the sex, you're missing out on the fact that there's probably equally amount of footage of them eating in this film, and food becomes such a big metaphor. There's how to eat oysters is such a sexual moment, and then there's Adele what likes fat on her ham, and there's just all this kind of stuff about enjoying the best things in life. And she cooks food, and they even the big breakup scene, they're eating, and then they meet up for dinner, and she will only have a coffee. It's just there's food references throughout this film, and I think that is part of the experience, is that we're diving into enjoying life.
One of the ones that got me was the stress eating. Like when she was emotionally laying back on her bed crying, and she grabs like a snack out of like a plastic wrapper in her bedroom and eats it like as like a comforting thing of just like, movies don't show that a lot. I mean, I guess romantic movies will just show like, let's have some ice cream on the couch or whatever, but this showed the emotional side of what that really actually is. You're right. Adele's relationship through food with this actually does show how she's feeling towards things. Everybody kept talking about how good her spaghetti was. I have to say, I was like, I kind of want to try that spaghetti.
I actually wanted to eat spaghetti right after that. Yeah, totally.
I don't know that I've ever had a film. I don't want to call this a teen film. I know they're ballpark age difference and whatnot. But there was a point in time when I first started working in the book industry where I picked up a couple of borderline, I'm not going to call it full on teen romance, but a couple borderline romance aspect books. And I was surprised at how many emotions those books invoked in me of being in high school, of being in love, that new the chase, the loss, and that sort of thing. Like, I was surprised at how much that did for me. This is the first and only movie that has done that.
Wow.
I love that.
So I've had several books do it, but this is the first film that did it.
Yeah, I don't want to take this away from it because it clearly means a lot to people. At some point, I just lost track of that this is a lesbian relationship, and these were just two people in love and struggling and then falling apart. It transcended that label if the movie had just been the first act, it would have been a pretty powerful movie in its own right as just that. But the last 2/3 of this movie don't really operate under that point. It's a relationship between two people. It's healthy to probably normalize it from that standpoint, but it did make you feel that way, So I did want to talk about the French setting. When you talk about France, this movie almost underglams France. This very much normalizes France. I mean, yes, there's the La Piscine Museum that's really like a nice moment, and then that park where Adele and Emma meet. But this is L'Isle Nord, France. This isn't Paris. There's scenes in Brussels as well. There's differences, and I think there are little novel differences between America and Europe that we can enjoy. Like, there's some differences in just how the high school kind of works and behaves and how they interact with themselves, their clothes and things like that. European sensibilities. However, I would say a lot of the Frenchness of it, if you will, in parentheses or air quotes, is downplayed in this. I was expecting, again, it's going for realism so much so that it downplays. Paris is a glamorous city, I mean,
Yeah.
you see it.
Yeah, no, I mean, they kept a lot of the scenes in people's houses, in bedrooms, and everything is shot very close. I mean, I'm thinking about the party scene where Adele's cooked for everybody. That I have a hard time even visualizing what was just outside of frame there, because everything is shot so they were probably in a really gorgeous back garden of a French home, but we barely saw that setting because that's not what's important, because that's what we think about. We think about the settings, right? But the people in the characters are just thinking about each other and their placement towards each other. So it's very focused on but just staying with inside the relationship rather than how they interact with the scenery and the setting. It is interesting to see that.
Yeah, I thought the most French things that they were doing, like there was the bus scene that seemed very French, and like when her and Thomas are on a date, what they're eating, like how they, like, as the movie goes on, I feel like I'm just watching people who are in not French, but like the art world. I'm not going to be as extreme to say that this could have been New York, but I'm just impressed that they downplayed the French nature of it. And maybe it's because Abdellatif might just be from another place. Like you said, he's an outsider himself, but I guess part of that is normalizing this and bringing this. Adele's not from that world. So we're not walking around this beautiful fairy tale land of Paris. We're not walking by the Eiffel Tower and all that stuff. So it's not Midnight in Paris, like
exactly
like Owen Wilson. Like that movie is just like, oh God, I want to go to France. This is super charming. This is not that. This is not a travel ad for come to France.
Well, yeah, of course not. It's not about a location. This is about people.
Exactly.
I'm sure the French people are not like, let's go out and we'll kiss on the Eiffel Tower. It'll be wonderful. No, it's let's go down to our favorite club and we're going to dance. And then I'm going to go to work tomorrow and I'm going to do everything in my power. The Arc de Triomphe is probably like Costco to them. Like, I'm going to avoid that like the plague if I can. So, yeah, I think it's
about the French. If it's not about France, it's about the French and
exactly.
life there, I think. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. I can see that.
They shot this and not in Paris, basically. That's a move. I mean, if you just walk around Paris, it is dripping with charm and history all over the place. So it is a conscious move, to your point, Bryan.
Yeah, but you don't drive out into like suburban Paris. You're not like, hey, I'm going to check out Flag Street 3/4 of a mile away from Montmartre or something like that. Like, that's just not what you're going to do when you're in Paris.
No, but like in contrasting, like when we did Sleepless in Seattle, or like Empire State Building's a big fairy tale like moment, or more to the point, Valentine's Day, when we covered that, like the whole thing just seemed like, isn't the whole world wonderful? Like,
but that's what makes this a classier film than everything you just mentioned.
Well, Valentine's Day is a different kind of movie. There's no doubt about it.
I think one could, if you wanted to stereotype, one could say that Emma is very French in her view of relationships, and and how dedicated she should be, and she just wants to just move on from Sabine to Adele to Lyle to it's a French view of love, I guess.
She strikes me as someone who always has a plan B.
Yeah, she's a user, I think. I mean, one of the things I come away from this film with sadness from is just how used that I think Adele feels at the end of that. This relationship, like I said, it was the most important relationship maybe that Adele will ever have. It's not for Emma. I don't think that it's not even top 5 probably. I mean, maybe it's the best sex she ever had. But in the grand scheme of things, it was only a few years, and and she has moved on. And yeah, I don't know. I think Emma just takes advantage of her. Cook for me, clean for me, be my support system so I can get ahead in art. And you're just some little school teacher.
I think she learns a lesson. Perhaps it's unsaid, but she's with a woman who has had a child. She's helping raise a 3-year-old in this. I believe that she has probably matured and settled down to some degree going forward from here. I don't know if it's just what I expect from the ages of the characters as they're going forward, but I think inside she has known that she has caused some of what had happened to Dell to go away, and there's regret that she has. You can kind of tell when they meet together again of there's a sadness of like, I did like you and you're special to me. You'll always be special. And that's a conflicted feeling. I'm not going to go out with you again. I can't go back there, but it is hard. Like you're kind of suckering me back in, like because of how special you were to me. There's something very real about that.
Yeah.
It's a very mature way to break up and to say like, you've impacted me, you've shaped me, you've changed my view on the world. And for that, I'm grateful. I think a movie that's like that is Her, which is another great movie. It's a long, slow burn. And the message of that one of like saying like, hey, thank you for everything, even though we're not together anymore. That is a very grown-up lesson to have to take in. And that's a very mature thing that, quite frankly, a lot of people don't have.
But yeah, and that's where she eventually reaches, right? But like her method of breaking up with her is not mature at all. I mean,
That was
it's
emotional.
terrible and so mean. And I think that has to come from a place of like that guilt that we're not seeing as to whether or not she cheated on her or not, you know. But she's overreacting because that's the only way she can break off this relationship. Probably because the sex is so good, you know. She's trying to make it impossible for them to be together. She is so awful in that scene. It is emotional abuse. Yeah.
It's getting close to physical too, with her pushing her out. So I mean, it's close.
The only caveat I will make to that is if there's a lot of conjecture here on what Emma is and is not doing, but if her only crime is being passively neglect, I guess maybe is the best word for this, is neglecting some of Adele's needs, and Adele stepping out and having a relationship on the side, no matter how much she protests it means nothing. It's a dark place. I can only speak very mildly from experience because it only happened to me once and I was very young. But some people don't have a filter for that anger. And I can't bring myself to completely damn Emma if the situation was lined up correctly, where she really was the victim of a serious relationship cheating incident.
And that's good filmmaking because we've talked a lot about these questions. That's good to not spoon feed people everything.
And Adele's, you know, in being a younger person, she's not getting that she can't fix it, that it's not just going to be a hug and an I'm sorry. She pushes the interaction.
Some people have it within themselves to forgive the person in that situation. Some people don't.
But it gets incrementally worse for Emma the more she tries to belittle the act as not a big deal. Like, you see the things that Adele is saying is stoking the fire, not fixing it. And I believe that is a thing too.
Yeah, and I feel for her because I've been in my own arguments before where you're desperately grasping for straws. And you're right. Hindsight, you'll sit there and come back and be like, I was digging my hole way deeper.
I can't put this damning piece on Emma for that interaction because we're presumably 4 years into this relationship, and
I think it's 6.
6.
She's 15 when we meet her, and then she graduates from college and stuff. She has her 18th birthday before they go to like the second act. And then there's a lot of time passes. And they mentioned we have a 3-year-old daughter, and she was just pregnant before. So I believe that's a 3-year jump and another 3-year jump, if I'm doing my math right.
I guess all I'm saying is that's some heavy stuff in a very serious relationship. It doesn't get to just be this relationship was powerful for Adele.
Yeah.
Like, that's not fair. No matter what Emma's ancillary issues with doing what she needs to be a good partner, that doesn't change the feelings she would still have at that sort of infraction.
Yeah. As far as the soundtrack go, I thought it was pretty interesting. The drum player and the character of Thomas was suggested the actor who plays him actually does make some of the music that we have in this movie. So that's kind of a fun thing.
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of movie where you don't notice the music unless they're at a dance club or something like that. In general, I sort of, it just washes over you.
I felt we were in a European movie, in fairness.
Yeah.
This didn't make my change one thing, but being my favorite European music genre, I think it could have done with a little bit more trip hop.
All right. Why don't we get into some superlatives, you guys?
Let's go.
Sounds good.
All right. Bears, who is your MVP?
I mean, this is easy. It's our lead actress. It's Adele. She gives one of the best performances I think I've ever seen in a coming of age film. It's so real. It's so heartbreaking when she's hurt, and it's so intense when they're in the sexual act, you know? I mean, you can't deny the fact that that scene is unbelievable in terms of, like, I mean, it's so good, and I still feel like it's the same actress throughout, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
like she's able to do everything in this movie. Everything that she was asked to do, she can do. And like you said, I want to see the sequel. I want to know what happens to the rest of Adele's life. I think it's because, you know, she really pulls us through this whole film, and this performance is one of my favorites.
It was great.
I want to put a really intense question to both of you. If this entire movie was shot from Emma's perspective, how would it have changed it for you?
I mean, that's very different. Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, we would know if Emma cheated, so I think that would change our entire opinion on that breakup. But I don't think Emma is not as interesting or as lovable of a character simply because of the background. I mean, Emma is coming from a rich family. She's got parents who support her and who support her coming out, and she doesn't have the roadblocks that Adele has.
Okay.
You know, with something you're onto something. Emma is a formed character. She is a lesbian. She's proud. She's established. She's gone through her journey. She knows who she is. She's massively confident. She's what Adele kind of, in some ways, there's a reason she's enamored by her. Like, you know, she's almost like heroic to her. Whoa, you can do this? Like, you know, you're kicking down my doors for me. Of like, I think you're right. Emma's movie would have a very different start much earlier if you wanted to, if you will. But I mean, there's the two characters are so different. Adele is unformed and finding out about herself in this.
I just feel like it's a misnomer to not take into account what Emma's been through.
That's fair. That's fair. I mean, she's just more formed when we meet her. That's all.
Sure. I'm just saying that if you did this from Emma's perspective, let's say that the film was much more backlog, say Act 1 and 2 got you to Adele. And then because you don't have to spend as much time on Adele, that Act 3 piece would be quicker. Just her, you know, that piece and what she's struggling with.
I don't know. It could be a very short movie. It could just be like, hey, I'm here with this chick, and hey, that Adele chick's pretty hot. I'm going to go with her now.
Yeah, she's a serial cheater, I think. I don't know. I'm sorry. I'm not on Team Emma.
No, that's fine. And I agree, because that's why I brought it up, because the entire time I was predisposed to believing Adele and not believing Emma. Like the whole movie, that was where I was at. So that caused me to give pause for a minute and say, okay, what if I've got this wrong? This is a movie that has really enjoyed doing what I didn't expect. So what if that continues in the fact that she really was the one seriously wronged by this?
Bryan, what's a spinoff?
No, I don't. I'm not with you guys on the sequel. I like exactly where it left us.
So Bryan wants a different movie. He wants orange is the coolest color.
It is the newest black.
So who is your MVP though, Bryan? Is it Lea Seydoux?
The Feels.
The Feels.
Okay. I love a movie
that
I love a movie that can actually get me in the feels. I've stated several times I do not watch movies and I do not read books for emotional calisthenics. This was a very viscerally emotional film, and sometimes, and even I have to admit it, sometimes you need that, and this is where it was.
Yep, he doesn't often go there, but this movie took him there. So I can agree with that. It's just an emotionally exhausting movie to do. It's long. It's there's a reason I don't pick these up every day, but I'm glad I did with this one. My MVP was right there with you, Bears. Adele Xenopoulos. I want to see more from this actress. I don't know if she wants to come over to the American film industry and do work, but boy, her facial acting, her unsureness, her quietness, her support, her falling for somebody, the hurt, the curiosity, the insecurity, the desperation. I mean, I'm just, this is only a fraction of the tip of the iceberg. I mean, we're doing a lot of stuff here. And she does it all so well, as you mentioned, Barris.
Yeah.
So this is a good acting performance here. I don't know how the Oscars just totally missed this movie in terms of these kinds of awards too, for like best actress and stuff like that.
I mean, 10 years ago, they didn't often give as many accolades to films in another language. I think that's one thing we've seen in the last 10 years is that more awards are going to things not written in English language.
Interesting. Maybe they were awarded in their own country, and so we shouldn't negate that. I mean, this won some pretty heavy awards just from the European side.
America isn't everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, I got to backpedal everything I just said. It's very accomplished. So, best supporting actress. I mean, I think I know where this is going, but bears.
Well, I mean, I kind of want to give this to like a comparison of two actors. Like, I really enjoyed the supporting roles of the parents in both families. You know, like I think the performances were so strong to see the difference between what it was like to sit down to dinner in Emma's family versus what it was like to sit down to dinner in Adele's family, and how different that was, and the incredible awkwardness of Adele's parents, and the like just awful questioning that you do, like, you know, oh well, how are you going to make money doing art, and those kind of. I was so uncomfortable during that scene, and I think that comes from just really great performances and a very sense of truth. I think of like caught in a awful dining situation with your parents, which I've definitely experienced. so I want to give the supporting award to both sets of parents.
Nice. Yeah. What about you, Bryan?
I actually co-gave it to the main actresses in this film. You can't have one without the other. This would not be a film if you didn't have the counterbalance. So kudos.
I boosted up Adele Exarchopoulos more, but Léa Seydoux is just as good, just as skilled. Her characters does different things. She comes to the dance with all the things. She worked very hard at it, and so she's amazing at this. So she's technically my best supporting actor. She's kind of another lead. So I wasn't sure if this was a gray area, so I had like a backup. But Jermaine Lahurete, who did Thomas, was really good. You know, he just did the "I'm into you" thing, which it's low level, but he was asked to do intimate scenes himself. He's full frontal himself in there, and as well, he comes, you know, he breaks down and cries and stuff like that on screen, and I felt for him. I felt for her, and it was just like, neither of you are bad people. This is just unfortunate.
Yeah, that was a very real scene of being in a moment where you realize it's not going to work, and you feel bad for both of them there. You're
did.
Oh, I want to get out of this right now.
Yeah,
bail.
That's another kind of hard breakup that this movie puts you through, of just like nobody's at fault here, and it just hurts. So
yeah,
hidden gem. Bears.
This is a hard one for me because I feel like, you know, he's very conscious of what he's putting on screen. So like there aren't a whole lot of minor cast members in this, you know, like how about if I say food, you know,
that counts. You talk
like
about
the
that.
Oysters and that sort of thing, and using the oysters as a way to examine sexuality. I thought was really great, a really exciting scene, especially when, you know, at one dinner we hear, oh, I don't like shellfish. And then the very next thing is like, okay, let me kind of ease you into like shellfish, you know, with oysters and like bring you more into this world.
Yeah. Bryan, who or what is your hidden gem?
This is also kind of a tandem, but only because one picks up where the other one left off. It's Valentine's character as the only one really supporting her in her school days, takes her to the club that she eventually leaves to go find Emma. And then he basically kind of tags out for Samir's character later on, who understands that maybe Adele's not quite being treated appropriately based on her age and experience and that sort of thing, and really goes out of his way to say, okay, I understand that you're not having fun at these parties because you don't know these people and talk the way they do. And even though I disdain it to a certain level, that I'm going to hang out with you instead. So there are a couple gay male actors who basically kind of hold her hand through some of these times where she has no one, including her significant others, to do so. And I really liked that piece.
Great point, by the way. Mine's going to be hair. Léa Seydoux's hair is precise. It's confident. It's different. It's signaling different. It says, I don't want to conform. I'm going to live proudly this way with my blue hair, and you'll see me across the street. And, you know, it's a big theme throughout the movie. And similarly, Adele, perhaps less overly stated, is messy. She hides behind her hair locks. Like they kind of go in front of her face. It's charming in its own way. She's a very pretty woman.
It's the best messy hair I've ever seen in my life. Like
it is.
She's like, is it messy enough? And I'm like, oh God, it's perfect again. Like it doesn't matter what you do.
I was also something where like, gosh, That's very nice hair. So, but you're right. There was no makeup artist. There was no hairstylist on set. And the actresses were not allowed to wear any makeup as part of this movie. They're just pretty. I mean, that's just who they are. And I mean, again, it just compounds the realism that this movie has and the amount of expression that they get from not speaking in their faces, but also in what they're wearing and what their hair is doing. It conveys so much about their character without they're saying. I mean, this is good directing, but credit to them. I mean, they help put up their own outfits and do the stuff collectively. Again, they're working on it for like a whole year.
Yeah, but I mean, that's like, that's the classic indie film sort of mentality of like, well, my wardrobe is what I wear. My wardrobe is what I have in my own wardrobe, and my character is who I am. Oh, and now we're actually going to name it after me. I mean, like, to me, that's just like working on a indie film, and so I love that.
But if you look up Adele Exarchopoulos, I mean, she's a very glamorous, pretty lady. So I mean, this is dressing down for her. So maybe not at age 18. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe not when she made this movie. She wasn't. Yeah,
maybe not. You're right. This certainly would have brought her some serious attention. All right, if you had to recast somebody and put somebody else in their place, Bryan, who would it be? And you are allowed to jump the pool and come to America if you need to, by the way, because it makes it easier.
I actually initially, when watching this, I couldn't remember what year it came out. So when I first started watching this, I had to look it up because I thought Adele was a young Alicia Vikander. Looked so much like her to me, and I was like, oh. And then I looked it up and I was like, oh, I'm just wrong. And I was like, this is a great opportunity to completely punt on recast because I don't have a good one. So I'm just going to say I'm going to recast her with the person I thought she was.
I like that.
Bears, who would you recast?
My first answer was going to be I wouldn't recast anyone because this is perfect. But I am going to say I'm going to cheat and recast it for an American remake.
Okay.
And say if I was going to do an American remake of this right now, I'm casting Kristen Stewart as Emma, and I'm casting Hunter Schafer from Euphoria as Adele. Hunter Schafer plays Jules and is also trans. So that would add another little wrinkle to it. But that's my recast as a couple. I think the age difference is right. And that I think they both have done some explicit scenes and they both could convey the emotion of this. So that's my American version. Somebody hire me to direct it. I'm ready to go.
Okay. Yeah, and I went lower stakes than that, but I love what you did. I kind of wish I had put some thought into that direction. But the character, Amelie, Fanny Morin, she's the girl who has the more round face. She's got darker hair, and she's kind of the major instigator of like pushing the questions to her friends. Like I would say she's the lead bully of like, say, hey, how was your sex?
The one I wanted socked in the face.
Yeah, hey, no, not the one who got all crying and like you were sleeping next to me. Not that girl. This was the other girl who was like with the cigarette, like being like, hey, how is your sex? Tell us about that. I was like, ugh. That's awkward. These are conversations that men don't tend to have in these sort of things, but it's just like, man, she doesn't want to talk about it. Get off of it. So I also felt mad at her, but I thought Margaret Qualley from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood might be a good person to do for me. So why did I pick on her? I just felt like it's a demanding role, and maybe this character didn't bring it as much as obviously the leads did in some of these other really great support characters such as the parents did. So young actors are tougher though. Again, it's not necessarily a glamorous movie, but what do you feel like is the best shot, Bears?
There's a shot early in the movie where Adele is writing in her journal, which becomes a plot point a little bit later, but she's like basically sitting on her desk at the window, so you can see a little bit of the French countryside behind her. But it's that moment of like, I think I have found someone, and I'm going to be alone with my thoughts for a moment. And I just love that idea of a young girl journaling, and it's she's at profile. It's just it's a beautiful moment early in the film where it just draws you into her, I think, really well.
Yeah,
I don't know if you remember that one. It's very
Yeah, how about you, Bryan? What's your best shot?
I really liked the setup for the obsession that ends up being their relationship, where they're passing each other on the crosswalk, and you had both of them kind of do the,
oh yeah. Yeah, they definitely said this is going to be important.
Right.
Like, you knew it the first time you watched it. I figured, Bryan, you were going to do the depressed walking away into the distance I really thought you were
the
going
Incredible
there.
Hulk. The
You love
Incredible
it.
Hulk
You love a dark down ending.
I
think you
do.
should really-
I love the sad walking away scene. I do. It's
I thought you were going to do it. You even said it earlier. I was like, that's his best shot.
no, but it's also a piece to say that, you know, for every sad walking away scene, you have to have a Pac-Man they meet, you know, and that was the they meet, because I don't think I'm not sure if anybody would walk away from this movie and say they should never have done what they did.
No, I think that was one of the mature things about that in the end. Yeah.
You know, you don't get a really heartfelt sad walking away scene unless you've loved to the extent that they loved, and that was the point of the film.
Absolutely.
Yeah. People talk about the meet cute in the romantic comedy, you know, being kind of a trope, but it's a trope because it is a real thing. I mean, we do all have moments where we meet the person we're going to be with, and it is a cute moment because we retell that story. You know, that's what it is, and I think we see a really beautiful interaction with them when they finally get to talk for the first time.
Yeah. My best shot's gotta be the park bench when Emma draws Adele. I'm a sucker for all the good feels, so this is when it felt the best. So, best scene, Bears.
Why don't you go first, Russell?
Well, this never happens.
You do it.
This is pandemonium.
I know you always, but yet you're just in control, and you're like you, and you always go last. I'm like, I want to see your best scene first.
In a weird way, behind the curtain, sometimes people take my choice and I act like they don't. But
I love it.
So my best scene is when Adele's friends grill her for the unknown, let's just say masculine friends, a nicer way of saying it, for the show. And she's upset that she's being pushed away from her friends for being lesbian inside. She denies it to her friends, and the bullying, it is just so painful. And it is just so visceral, and it's just one of those moments where you sit there as a human being and you sit there and go like, man, it's real. Why does the world have to be that way? I hate all of that. Yeah, that's my best scene. Doesn't feel good, but I mean, this movie made me really feel for, these are shoes that I guess I just didn't put myself into very much. And this movie forced me to think about those things. And that's a pretty powerful thing to do.
Absolutely. Yeah, my best scene is also one that isn't the happy feels, and it's when they re-meet and Adele basically tries to get Emma to come back to her, including sucking on her fingers, you know, just going all in on making this happen, and the fact that it doesn't work. You know, I just think
Note to self: if you're trying to win somebody back, sucking their fingers doesn't.
But to me, it felt like it should have. Like, I was like, oh, that's gonna work. You know, I really thought that scene was great because you see how much control Emma has had of that relationship the whole time, and I don't think Adele realized it. I think Adele really did think she was coming into this meeting and was probably going to be able to get her back, and I think at the end of it, then she realizes, oh, I'm never going to get her back, and so by the time she comes to the gallery scene, the big ending scene, it's fairly obvious that she doesn't think she's going to get her back. She is definitely old history. And there's that moment of like, oh, there you are. You're still on the wall. You know, you still made the wall. You're still a memory for Emma, but that's just one painting out of an entire gallery of experiences.
Yeah, you're right. Bryan, how about you? What's your best scene?
It's the art discussion when they're talking about it. Clement he's very much about covered, less exposed, yellow showing light, and basic fears of exposure, while Chiles is raw, not nude, or not necessarily nude, but sharp wedges, angles, colors, meant to imbue harsher frame in an object. And I feel like it's interesting because that's what Emma's work that she ends up getting displayed is.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the one that she says she doesn't like, but it's the one that Lise likes. And yeah, that's the direction her art takes.
Yeah, that's a good point. Best wardrobe or makeup moment. I gushed about hair already, but Bears.
This is another one of me playing with your categories. I'm gonna say my best wardrobe moment is the 6.5 minute sex scene when they're completely naked and we are just left to look at their beautiful bodies rubbing up against each other, and it's just in your face. Like, look how comfortable these actresses are. Look how comfortable these women are with each other. You know, if you're inside the movie, you know, you can't escape it. And I just love a movie that just calls you out on it. And especially as an American, like you said. This movie is it's just like, how much can you take? And I love that. I love to be challenged.
Okay, yeah, and that is a fair thing to say. Is we often say, "What's your favorite music?" or whatever, and people say the absence of music. So yes, the absence of wardrobe certainly counts as best wardrobe moment. Bryan, how about you?
It's the blue dress. This will be my sad walking away scene. It's the
He had to give it some attention.
it's the ode to what was once lost. This is something that attracted me to you in the first place. It's something that I felt that it meant something to you at the time. So I'm trying still desperately in vain to rekindle something. So I will wear it here.
And I love the moment of before she goes to the party and she's looking at herself in the dress and thinking about it. She knows that dress is important.
Mhm.
She knows that wardrobe moment is important before she goes into the scene. I love it.
I've kind of spoiled mine ahead of time, but I had to double down, just say hair. It says so much. But shout out to Léa Seydoux's wardrobe that she wears, the confidence and stuff that she has. She's attractive in that too, so it works. Change one thing, Bears.
This is hard because I think this is a pretty perfect movie, and the thing I want to change is the bullying from the friends, and that's because it's just so hard to watch. And I think if this movie was being made now, that scene would be very different, simply because we've evolved since then. But also, I think we're very conscious of bullying and how we talk about it and how we portray it now. So I'd be curious to see how that scene would play.
I still think it's a sad, unfortunate reality with a lot of social circles in a lot of places still.
Yeah. I don't know if it is in France. How about that?
You might have your geography and your people, but for the rest of those geographies and the rest of the social circles out there, it's sadly too real still, probably. But
yeah.
Yeah. Bryan, change one thing.
For all of the very personal shots that the director uses in this film, the ones of her sleeping with her mouth open drove me nuts. I don't know why I had such a problem with it, but I would cut every single sleeping with the mouth. Like, you shoot her from a different angle. I don't know what it is, but I was just sitting there like, shut your mouth. Don't shut. Just. I don't know why it bothered me so much, but literally after like the 10th one, I was like, do it again. Do it again. I dare you to do it again.
I thought you were going to say the bullying girl that you really hated to have a pigeon flag.
Well, no. I mean, I definitely still think she should have gotten slugged by somebody else, but
that's what I think.
No. I just, dude, I don't know why that grated on me so much, but they did it like 24 times, and I was just like, oh, he's doing it again. Here, we got another one. We got it. And I don't know if it's just mouth shape and the teeth. I drove me nuts.
I don't know. I'm probably going to take some heat for this one. But if you want to watch blatant girl on girl scenes, there are other movies that are strictly of a different kind of entertainment that do that. And I think that this movie gets attention for things or for shock value, and I don't want to cheapen the characters. And so I think some of them are just a little bit too long, and that they go beyond serving the characters and the plot, I think, is all I'll say. My American guilt can't totally be overcome by I sat there and said, well, that's a lot. So I think if we dial it down, I mean, it is 22 minutes or whatever of straight up sex in this movie.
I mean, but the movie's 3 hours.
That's fair.
So,
that's also fair. But I mean, that's another point. Like, you could trim some movie down or give me one additional scene to show me what happens to Adele in 20 more years. I really need that.
Although most of the sex is in the first half too. That's another thing. So it feels like more of it because that's when they were happy, right?
Oh yeah.
So I think it's a little front loaded.
Yeah. So anyway, sorry for that one. I know that's missing the point. But
sorry, this is super random, but I think Florence Pugh would also make a very good Emma.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I see that for sure. Best quote. Bears.
What was the first time that you tasted sausage? A girl. I mean, like, especially because they're eating at the time and they're talking about food. Food is such a part of this. And so when they're asking each other about their past, and Adele wants to know about like when Emma knew she was a lesbian, it's as she's eating sausage. So it's just and Adele talks about it as tasting a girl. And Emma says, "Oh, do you mean kiss?" So that was a really great scene between the two of them, and I thought it was kind of funny. I actually said I wonder if that's part of the translation. I'm curious to know maybe what that was in the original.
Yeah, I didn't do well in French class. I'm not going to lie, so I'll defer to Bryan on that one. His French must have been better than mine.
Oh, no, you really don't want to.
Bryan, best quote.
Regret is about not filling the emptiness in your heart.
Wow. Yeah.
It's beautiful.
I went with the more poetic one when Emma says, "Nothing happens by chance." Bears, we've come a long way here. Please tell our listeners one more time. Remind everybody about AGLIF, the All Genders, Lifestyles, and Identities Film Festival in Austin.
The oldest queer festival in the Southwest, the fourth oldest in the country, and it is August 23rd through the 27th. We're going to have all sorts of great queer films all weekend long at the Galaxy Theater, and I'm excited. We're actually doing a 10th anniversary screening of a film called GBF, which is Gay Best Friend, which is a film that premiered at Tribeca. It's super funny, and it was one of my first gay films that I programmed at a festival. So it's an exciting film for me because I was working at a different film festival at the time, and I was like, I want to play this gay movie and I want to put it at the big theater, and I don't care if you think that won't sell tickets. So I'm excited to be bringing that film back in a 10th year anniversary, which also we should mention this is the 10th year anniversary of Blue's the Warmest Color too.
Yes, it is. Which is as new as we go, by the way. This is the new retro. So this is, you just made the cutoff with the newness here. And this is going to air after. The festival is unfortunately over by the time we edit and get this out there. So,
well, then I'm going to say go back and look up GBF from Darren Stein, who's also responsible for Jawbreaker, which is a great cult classic. He really knows high school cliques and the danger of falling in and out of step with them.
But this lives forever, so it will be back the following year. So August is the time when you want to keep your heads open for this one, right?
That's right. Yep.
Your eyes open, your heads up. I don't know why I said heads up or eyes open. I don't know. I messed that up. So anyway, on a 5-star scale with half-star intervals, Bears, what would you give this movie?
I'm giving it a 4.5, and I think that my only reason to not go perfection on it is 3 hours is a real long time for me. Even though I forgot I was watching credits, I forgot I was watching subtitles, but I did still feel the length of the 3 hours, and I think thinking about it, I like it because I like to spend time with the actors like that. And like I said, but it is, I think that's maybe there's a 2 hour and 40-minute version of this film that doesn't take out any of the sex. I'm gonna disagree with you, but does tighten some other things up. I think some of the scenes, some of the group scenes, maybe were longer than they needed to be.
Last 35 minutes or so is a little bit rough after they break up. Like we get it. We feel bad for what's happening to Adele.
Yeah.
The scene of her just going through the motions at work, you kind of have to be happy for kids there, but the emptiness that she feels inside, just this is hard. I feel for you. So
yeah.
Bryan, how about you? 5-star scale, half-star intervals.
I gave this one a solid 4. There's not a whole lot I would change to this. We've already gone over some of my issues in terms of making this a easily rewatchable film and something that's frankly accessible to people like me who don't want to maybe get branded as it being something else. So, it's tough in that way, but this is a really good movie.
I like these movies. It broadens our horizons. There's no genre or type of movie that we won't cover, and I've had a lot of fun doing this.
Except Leprechaun 2.
That's not a good movie. But anyway,
you said there's nothing you wouldn't cover.
No, I said I like all the things that we broaden our horizons and the things that we get to cover and expose us to new things and to, study things that we love closer. So none of that includes Leprechaun, by the way. But anyway, I wrote down 3.5, but I realized in talking to this, it doesn't necessarily feel good. And I can't dock a movie just for not feeling good. It hit me in the feels in a very real way that I won't forget. I won't rewatch this movie probably because it is so long. And because, like Frye said, it's not the kind of movie you sit there and you grab your family and say, hey, you haven't seen this? Let's watch this. So together. So I do think I may have docked a little hard, and I think in talking about it and how real it felt, how unforgettable it is, I'm going to go up to join you, Bryan, the 4 tier as well. So
I'm glad I could bring this film to you guys.
Yeah. Bryan, do you want to help me pick a movie for next time?
Of course.
So the 80s was a time for great funny movies. Are you ready for some 80s comedy films here?
Let's do it.
Option 1, Airplane from 1980. After a crew becomes sick with food poisoning, a neurotic ex-fighter pilot must land a commercial airline full of passengers to safety. Option 2, Caddyshack, also from 1980. An exclusive golf course has to deal with a brash new member, a destructive dancing gopher, and a lot of mayhem. Just fun stuff. Option 3, The Naked Gun from the Files of the Police Squad in 1988. Incompetent police detective Frank Darabin must foil an attempt to assassinate Queen Elizabeth II.
Better be Caddyshack.
I'm all right. Don't have to worry about me. All right. Bears, thank you so much for joining us. We had a blast.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me on again.
And to all the lords, ladies, and knights of the Retro Movie Roundtable, we invite you to reach out to us. So we want to hear from you. So subscribe, rate, and review to us on Apple Podcast, Spotify, Google Podcast, wherever you get your podcast. Subscribe to us on our YouTube channel as well. Like us on Facebook, Instagram. Follow us on Twitter at @movie_retro. And their little weird new logo that looks like the Xerox symbol that's going to be an X and not the little cute Twitter bird anymore. So I don't like it. I don't like the X. Emails at retromovieroundtable@yahoo.com. And producing and providing this podcast is fun but not free. We invite you to support the show at our Patreon page at www.patreon.com/retromovieroundtable. All contributions are much appreciated and go towards making the show better for you, the listeners. As always, thank you for listening. Be good to each other and watch more movies. Bryan?
Whatever machination that created us has but one irrevocable flaw, the invention of love that cannot be equally satiated and cannot be repeated once found. It is to be that once acquired, to be sought after hence.